My name is Natalie Mercer. I'm 31 years old. And the night I caught my fiancé at 2 in the morning, smiling down at his phone, like the woman on the other end mattered more than the life we had built together, was the night something inside me went still. Not broken, not shattered. Still, like a lake right before a storm finally decides to show its full face. 2 months have passed since then, and some parts of it still feel unreal when I replay them. My best friend keeps telling me I should write it all down before memory sands the edges off the details. Maybe she's right. Maybe this is less about telling the story and more about proving to myself that it happened exactly the way I remember it. Because when somebody betrays you slowly, politely, in pieces, it can make you question your own senses. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I work as an operations supervisor at a distribution center for a regional grocery chain. It isn't glamorous. No one hears that title and imagines a chic office with skyline views and artisanal coffee in the lobby. It's steel racks, loading docks, cold mornings, broken pallets, delayed shipments, and people calling off right when 3 trucks hit the yard at once. I've been there 7 years. I started on the floor at 19, loading trucks until my shoulders burned and my hands felt permanently dusted with cardboard grit. At 23, I made shift lead. At 27, supervisor. The money is good, the benefits are solid, and more than that, I like the work. I like solving problems. I like walking into chaos and leaving order behind. I like being the person my team looks for when something goes sideways. There is a rhythm to operations work. Things either move or they don't. A plan either holds or it falls apart under pressure. I've always trusted that more than charming words. 3 years ago, I bought my first house. Nothing extravagant, just a 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood on the east side of Columbus. But it was mine. Mine in the mortgage payment sense. Mine in the property tax sense. Mine in the if the water heater dies at midnight, it's my problem sense. The previous owner was an older man named Walter, who had lived there for 4 decades and treated home maintenance like a sacred duty. The foundation was solid. The roof was only 5 years old. The HVAC system was practically new. He had folders labeled by year with receipts going back to the late 90s. Every repair, every service call, every upgrade. I remember sitting cross-legged on the living room floor during closing, flipping through those folders, and thinking this was what devotion looked like when aimed at a place instead of a person. I got lucky on timing, too. Bought before prices went feral. My mortgage is lower than what some people pay to rent a shoebox downtown. The house became my project. Weekends, I pulled up the old carpet Walter had kept over the hardwood and spent hours refinishing the floors. I updated the kitchen cabinets myself after watching an embarrassing number of tutorials. Built a 12x16 deck in the back with my dad's help over 3 long weekends. He's a plumber, so I grew up around tools and repair jobs and the language of fixing things before they got worse. Carpentry was newer for me. I made mistakes, had to redo the railing twice, swore enough to scandalize the neighbors. But when it was done, it was strong and level and mine. My truck is a 2018 Silverado. Paid it off last year. I'm not a truck girl in the performative tailgate selfie way some people try to be. I just like reliability. I like knowing if I need to haul lumber, move furniture, or leave town without asking anybody for help, I can. That was my life before Evan. Steady, earned, not flashy, but clean in the way a well-run life feels clean. I met Evan at my cousin's wedding 4 years ago. He was there as a +1 for one of the bride's coworkers, someone I barely knew. He ended up at my table during dinner because of a last-minute seating mess, and the first thing he said to me was that the centerpieces looked like a florist lost a fight with a chandelier. I laughed harder than the joke deserved. Then we kept talking. We talked through this dry chicken, through the bad speeches, through the DJ's weird insistence on early 2000s club songs nobody asked for. By the time the venue staff started stacking chairs, I realized midnight had somehow arrived without either of us noticing. He was 28 then, worked as an event coordinator at a hotel downtown. Tall, easy smile, dark hair that always looked slightly undone in a way that seemed accidental until you knew him better and realized it absolutely was not. He had the kind of energy that made people lean in, warm without seeming fake, attentive without feeling intense. And he listened. That was what got me. Most men I dated heard distribution center supervisor, and their eyes glazed over. somewhere between warehouse and logistics. Evan didn't. He asked follow-up questions. What was the hardest part of the job? How did I handle people older than me, not wanting to take orders from a woman? What was the weirdest crisis I'd ever had to fix on shift? I remember thinking, standing under twinkle lights with my heels off in one hand and a melting drink in the other, that no one had ever treated my life like it was interesting before. Before we left, he gave me his number and told me he wanted to see me again. I assumed wedding magic had inflated the moment into something it wasn't. But 3 days later, after forcing myself not to text too soon, I reached out anyway. We went to dinner that Friday, coffee that Sunday, dinner again Wednesday. And then it stopped feeling like dates and started feeling like gravity. Within a month, we were inseparable. Evan was different from the men I'd dated in my 20s. I'd had a few relationships, none of them serious enough to survive real pressure. One guy told me I lacked ambition because I was content building a stable career instead of chasing executive titles I didn't even want. Another kept suggesting I go back to school for some polished business degree, as if the life I had earned through experience and grit somehow counted less because it didn't come framed. But Evan said he liked that I was grounded, said too many women he knew were obsessed with appearances, with sounding impressive, with projecting a life they hadn't built. He said I was real, that I had a house, a career, a paid-off truck, and a steadiness most people only pretended to have. He called it refreshing. I called it being seen. He moved into my house after a year. It made sense. He was there most nights anyway, and his lease was ending. We split expenses down the middle, kept finances separate but fair. He handled more of the decorative things, the soft touches I never would have prioritized. Throw pillows that somehow actually matched. Framed prints for the hallway. Candles that smelled expensive. I handled the functional pieces. Maintenance, repairs, bills, schedules, backup plans. Together it worked. The house felt fuller with him in it. We'd cook dinner after work, one of us chopping vegetables while the other complained about our day. Watch movies on the couch, fall asleep halfway through and wake up tangled in the throw blanket with the TV still glowing blue across the room. It was ordinary in the best way, the kind of ordinary people spend years trying to find. His parents lived about an hour away, in a smaller town outside Cincinnati. His father, Richard, was a retired cop. Old school, observant, economical, with words. The kind of man who could shake your hand and somehow make you feel like he had already formed an opinion about your credit score, your work ethic, and whether you returned shopping carts properly. His mother, Claire, was the opposite. Claire talked like silence offended her personally. She was friendly, nosy, warm, over-involved, and somehow always fully informed about everyone's business before they had finished living it. Classic extrovert, married to classic introvert. Evan warned me before I met them. Be yourself, he said, smiling, and prepare to be interrogated by my mother in a sweater set. He wasn't wrong. But luckily for me, Claire liked me from the start. The first time I visited their house, Richard was in the garage fighting with a garage door opener that had started jerking halfway up. I offered to take a look, found a loose connection that had probably been rattling worse for years, tightened it, rewired a section, got it running smooth again in 20 minutes. Richard gave me one nod and a quiet, appreciate it. The next day, Claire called Evan and apparently said, "That woman is not getting away from this family." After that, I was in. Claire started calling me her future daughter-in-law before Evan and I had even seriously discussed marriage. She texted me recipes, asked my opinion on paint colors, sent me links to home improvement articles with captions like, "Thought of you immediately." I had barely been around a few months, and already she folded me into the family like I'd always had a chair at the table. Evan's younger sister, Lily, was easier in a different way. She was 25, a nurse at a hospital in Cincinnati, with a dry sense of humor so sharp it could skin a conversation alive if she wanted it to. We clicked fast. She'd tease Evan at family dinners until he rolled his eyes and threatened to block her number, then turn around and ask me for advice about whatever man had most recently disappointed her. We developed that comfortable, almost sibling rhythm. She'd text me memes at random hours, warn me when Evan was being dramatic about something stupid, and send play-by-play commentary during family gatherings when Claire got too intense. I loved that family. Or maybe more honestly, I loved how easy it felt to believe I was becoming part of one. Evan proposed in October, 2 years into the relationship. It wasn't elaborate, just thoughtful. Dinner at my favorite Italian restaurant downtown. then a walk through Schiller Park, where we'd had our first real date. He stopped under the same tree where he had first told me he loved me, got down on one knee while the sun was slipping gold through the leaves, and asked me to marry him. I cried, said yes before he even finished the question. He had saved for months for the ring, told me later he went to 4 different jewelers and learned more about diamonds than any sane person should ever know. He spent almost $8,000 on it. Princess cut. Bright enough to catch light even in dim rooms. I remember the way he looked at me when he slid it onto my finger. Like he was proud. Like choosing me had anchored something in him. For a long time, I believed that look was real. Wedding planning started immediately. And because event coordination was literally his profession, Evan went into full command mode. Within a week, he had spreadsheets, budgets, vendor comparisons, draft timelines, color palettes, seating possibilities, backup rain plans, and a terrifying number of tabs open on his laptop at all hours. I had never seen anyone organize joy with such military precision. The venue was booked by November. A restored barn 40 minutes outside the city that could hold about 150 guests. Caterer by December, photographer by January, florist, DJ, cake, rentals, all lined up with contracts negotiated and details mapped out down to napkin colors. My main role was nodding, approving, and writing checks. I didn't mind. He was good at it, and I trusted him. The only thing I really pushed for was the food. I told him I refused to host a wedding where people left hungry and ended up in a drive-thru still wearing formal clothes. He rolled his eyes and called me aggressively Midwestern, but he agreed. We set the date for late June. Invitations went out in April. RSVPs started coming back. My parents hosted an engagement party in March. His parents hosted another in April at a country club that was fancier than anything I would have chosen for myself. A little more polished, a little more performative, but it was fine. We smiled through it, took photos, opened gifts, answered 100 versions of, "When did you know she was the one?" Everything was moving forward. 8 months of planning, thousands in deposits, a guest list with over 100 confirmations, a honeymoon booked, a future with structure, momentum, and public witnesses. We were 6 weeks out when the cracks widened enough for me to finally see them. Looking back, the warning signs had already started. Around February, Evan started bringing up a woman named Sienna, old college girlfriend. They had dated for 2 years while he was at Ohio State, broke up when she moved to Denver for work, and neither of them wanted to do long distance. Ancient history, he said. They had reconnected on social media recently. Just friendly catch-up. No big deal. At first, I believed him. People reconnect with exes. It happens. I'm not naturally suspicious, and I've never wanted to be the kind of woman who treats every female name like a threat. He mentioned grabbing coffee with her once while she was in town for work. I said, "Okay, have fun." And I meant it. But then Sienna kept appearing. Not physically, in conversation. Sienna thinks I should travel more. Sienna says Columbus is underrated. Sienna has the funniest story about hiking in Colorado. Sienna knows a restaurant in Denver I would love. Sienna says the hotel industry out west is totally different. It became a pattern, subtle enough that if I had pointed to it too early, I would have sounded insecure. But once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing. Every conversation curved back toward her somehow, like he had a magnet buried under the table, and every subject eventually slid in the same direction. I mentioned it once, lightly. "You talk about her a lot." He got defensive so fast it was almost impressive. "She's just a friend, Natalie. We have history. That's all." I'm allowed to have friends, aren't I? That last sentence told me more than the rest. Because people who are innocent don't usually reach for accusation that quickly. Still, I backed off. I didn't want to be that woman. The possessive one. The paranoid one. The fiancé who saw betrayal everywhere because she couldn't tolerate her partner having female friends. So I told myself I was overthinking it. Then March came, and he had a conference in Denver for work. Some hotel industry networking thing he attended every year. Panels, seminars, vendor dinners, trend forecasts. The kind of event he could describe in detail when he wanted to sound bored and important at the same time. He had gone the year before. It hadn't bothered me. This time felt different before he even left. He kept talking about how packed the schedule would be, how he probably wouldn't have much time to talk, how nonstop it was going to be. He sounded almost rehearsed, like someone laying down an alibi before anything had even happened. The conference lasted 3 days. We barely spoke. A good morning text, a late good night. That was it. Every time I called, he was just headed into a session, just leaving dinner with coworkers, just about to meet someone in the lobby, just too tired to really talk. The hotel Wi-Fi was terrible, apparently, so video calls were impossible. Funny how technology always seems to fail most dramatically when honesty would be inconvenient. When he came home, something had shifted. Not loudly. Not enough for proof. Just enough for instinct. He was more distracted, more private with his phone, smiled at his screen sometimes, then set it face down when I walked in. If I asked what was funny, he'd say nothing too quickly, or work stuff, or just scrolling. And the wedding planning, the thing that had once lit him up, suddenly seemed to exhaust him. Choices he used to debate for days, he now shrugged through. Whatever you want is fine. You pick. I don't care. At first, I told myself it was stress. Everyone says wedding planning is stressful. Everyone says the final stretch turns people into versions of themselves they barely recognize. But stress has a texture. What settled over our house felt more like absence. Like he was still physically there, still sitting beside me on the couch, still sleeping beside me in our bed, but some essential part of him had already stepped out of the room. Then came Tuesday, late April. I had worked a 12-hour shift because someone called in sick, and a major shipment was already behind before sunrise. I came home around 8, exhausted enough to feel hollowed out. Ate leftover pizza, standing at the kitchen counter. Half watched some forgettable show with Evan curled beside me on the couch. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just one more normal evening in the life I thought I still had. We went to bed around 11. I fell asleep almost instantly, and at 2 in the morning, I woke up needing the bathroom. That part I remember with painful clarity. The hallway dark, the bathroom tile cold under my feet. The house quiet in that eerie way houses get after midnight, when every appliance hum sounds louder than it should. When I came back into the bedroom, Evan was still awake. That wasn't unusual. He had always been more of a night owl than I was. Sometimes he'd scroll his phone or watch videos with headphones in while I slept. But something about him felt different that night. The expression on his face, that was the first thing. He was smiling, softly, intimately, like the person on the other end of that screen had reached into him and touched something tender. I hadn't seen that expression aimed at me in months, maybe longer. I slid back into bed without speaking and turned slightly toward him. He didn't even notice me watching. He was too absorbed. The glow from his phone lit one side of his face. His thumb moved slowly, deliberately. At the top of the screen, the contact name wasn't a name at all. Just a purple heart emoji. My pulse slowed in that strange way it does when your body understands danger before your mind lets the meaning in. I could see the messages from where I was, and then I saw him type, "Miss you so much, wish we could be together." For one suspended second, my brain refused to process it. Then her reply came in almost immediately. "I know, baby. Soon. Just be patient. Once everything settles down, we can make this work." He smiled wider. Typed again. "Can't stop thinking about that weekend. You make me feel things I forgot existed." I felt the air leave my body so quietly it almost sounded like someone else breathing. 3 years together. Engaged for 8 months. Wedding 6 weeks away. Deposits paid. Invitations mailed. Families intertwined. A ring on my finger. A home we shared. And next to me, under the same covers, the man I was supposed to marry was texting another woman that being with me was standing in the way of where his heart really lived. He kept typing. "Being here is torture when my heart is with you. This wedding feels like the world's longest prison sentence." That line should have broken me. Instead, something colder happened. The hurt didn't vanish. It just moved somewhere deeper, somewhere quieter, where it could harden without showing on my face. I expected rage. I expected tears. I expected the kind of collapse movies train us to think betrayal deserves. What arrived instead was clarity. Sharp, clean, almost calm. The kind of calm that comes when the worst thing has already happened, and all that remains is deciding what to do with the truth. I reached slowly for my phone on the nightstand. No sudden movements, no confrontation, no noise. He was too lost in that conversation to look up. I opened my camera, turned the flash off, and held the phone steady. Took one photo of his screen. Then another as he scrolled up, revealing older messages, more missing each other. More soon, baby. More traces of a second life I had never agreed to stand inside. He still didn't notice. That somehow hurt too. Not just that he was betraying me, but that he felt so safe doing it he couldn't even imagine I might be watching. I set my phone back down, turned away, stared into the dark. My mind was already moving ahead, assembling pieces, building a plan. Beside me, about 10 minutes later, Evan finally put his phone down. He leaned over and kissed my shoulder. "Love you," he whispered. The tenderness of it made my stomach turn. I kept my breathing even, pretended to be asleep. A minute later, I heard the faint vibration of his phone again against the sheets. He was still texting her. Still lying. Still close enough for me to feel his body heat while he wrote his future around someone else. And in that dark, with the house silent around us and the evidence glowing cold in my phone a few inches away, I understood something I would never be able to unknow. Sometimes the end of a relationship does not arrive with a scream. Sometimes it arrives with a smile you were never meant to see. I did not sleep after that. I lay there on my side, my back to Evan, staring into the dark, while my thoughts arranged themselves with the kind of brutal efficiency I usually reserved for work emergencies. There was no panic, no bargaining, no desperate inner voice insisting maybe I had misunderstood what I had just seen. I had not misunderstood anything. There are moments in life when denial is still possible, when truth stands at the door and you can pretend not to hear it knocking. But once you have read the words, "This wedding feels like the world's longest prison sentence" off the glowing screen in your fiancé's hand while he lies beside you in your bed, denial becomes a kind of self-harm. He dozed off sometime after 3. I knew because his breathing changed, deepened, settled. There is a rhythm to real sleep that cannot be faked, especially when you have spent years beside someone. I waited longer anyway. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Long enough to be sure. Long enough for the last scraps of softness in me to cool into something harder. Then I slipped out of bed. The floorboards in this hallway were quiet. The bathroom door clicked shut with barely a sound. I sat on the edge of the tub with my phone in both hands and looked at the photos again. Clear, sharp, readable. The purple heart at the top of the thread. His words, her replies. That line about his heart being with her. That line about our wedding feeling like prison. That was the moment my hurt fully transformed into action. I opened my email. The first message went to his parents. Subject line, wedding canceled. The body was simple. Found this on Evan's phone tonight. We're done. I'm sorry you had to learn this way. I attached the clearest photo. The one where every word could be read without needing context or imagination. Then I hit send. The second email went to Lily. Same subject line. Same image. Same short explanation. She deserved the truth before it got diluted into some family-friendly version of events where everybody spoke in euphemisms and no one said the word betrayal out loud. Then I moved to the vendors. Venue first. Need to cancel the June 24th ceremony and reception. Please process according to the contract terms regarding cancellation. Documentation attached. When Evan and I signed the venue contract, he had laughed at the infidelity clause buried in the middle of the cancellation policy. Who even needs that, he'd said, amused, tapping the page with one manicured finger. Apparently, I thought now, more people than you'd think. After the venue came the photographer, then the caterer, then the florist, then the DJ, then the cake designer, then the rental company, then the transportation service. Every vendor we had booked over the last 8 months got the same professional cancellation notice before sunrise. I kept the tone controlled. Brief. Factual. No dramatic monologue. No emotional bleed. Just the truth and the documentation. Canceling a wedding is not one act. It is a chain reaction. One contract after another. One deposit after another. One logistical thread after another unraveling in your hands while the person who caused it sleeps 20 feet away. Then I emailed my maid of honor, Tessa. She had already bought her dress, booked her hotel, taken time off work. I didn't give her a softened version either. The wedding is off. I caught Evan texting Sienna last night. It's worse than you think. I'll call you later. Then my parents. Then my brother. Then a handful of relatives and friends who either needed to know immediately or would be directly affected by the cancellation. I forwarded copies of everything to my personal email, uploaded the screenshots to cloud storage, backed them up twice. Then I took screenshots of all the sent emails with timestamps. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. I had spent enough time in life around people trying to rewrite events once consequences started landing. I knew exactly how quickly the truth could get trimmed, polished, reframed. I was not going to let him stand up later and tell people I had overreacted to harmless messages or sabotaged our wedding over a misunderstanding. By the time I was finished, it was a little after 6. The sky outside the bathroom window had begun softening from black to gray. That fragile hour before morning always feels strangely honest to me. Like the world hasn't fully put its makeup on yet. I went back to bed, slid beneath the covers. And for the first time since I had seen those messages, I let myself look at him. Evan was asleep on his stomach, one arm tucked under the pillow, his mouth slightly open in the careless way people sleep when they believe their lives are still intact. He looked peaceful, innocent, almost. If someone had taken a photograph of that moment without context, they would have seen a man resting beside the woman he was about to marry. Not a man who had spent the night planning emotional escape routes with another woman. I stared at him and felt nothing soft. No urge to wake him. No desire to demand an explanation. No fantasy of hearing the exact arrangement of lies he might try first. I just watched him sleep and understood, with a clarity so complete it felt almost holy, that the version of him I loved was already gone. Maybe she had never existed at all. At some point, I actually slept. Not deeply, not long, but enough to disappear for a couple of hours into that numb, gray place the body forces on you when it knows you won't rest voluntarily. I woke to noise. Phones exploding. Mine on the nightstand. His on his side. Buzzing, ringing, chimings, vibrating across wood. The kind of chaos that only erupts when private disaster becomes public fact. Evan jerked awake beside me, confused, squinting against the light. His phone lit up again. Mom calling. Then Lily. Then Dad. Then Mom again. His face tightened. What the hell? He answered on the third ring, voice rough with sleep. Mom. I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed, already reaching for clothes. At first, he just listened. Then his expression changed. The blood drained from his face so fast it looked almost theatrical. What photo? A pause. No, Mom, it's not. Another pause. Please just let me explain. I stood and pulled on yesterday's jeans from the floor. He was still on the phone when I walked into the bathroom, but 30 seconds later he appeared in the doorway behind me, phone clutched in one hand, eyes wild. What did you do? I met his gaze in the mirror while I tied my hair back. Sent proof. To who? Everyone who needed it. His voice dropped into a harsh whisper, sharp enough to cut. Natalie, what did you send? I turned then and faced him fully. Screenshots of your conversation with purple heart emoji. For a second, he said nothing. The silence between us was so dense it felt physical. Then came the first lie. You went through my phone? I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because the audacity of that question was almost elegant in its stupidity. I didn't need to. You were holding it up like a movie screen. I documented what I saw. His jaw tightened. That's completely out of line. You called our wedding a prison sentence, Evan. He froze. There it was. The first direct hit. No room to maneuver around that one. He tried anyway. I was venting. Venting. Yes, I was stressed. It was late. I was emotional. You told her your heart is with her. That's not what I meant. What did you mean then? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. That tiny hesitation told me more than any confession could have. I brushed past him and started putting toiletries into a bag with slow, steady movements. Toothbrush, makeup, charger, contact case. Small bottle of perfume I suddenly hated because he had once said he liked it. Natalie, stop. We need to talk about this. We are talking. No, we need to really talk. Privately, like adults. I zipped the bag shut. You lost the right to private damage control at 2 a.m. He stepped closer. You humiliated me. I turned so sharply he actually leaned back. No, I said quietly. I exposed you. He stared at me like he had expected me to cry instead. Beg instead. Give him the script where he got to play remorseful and persuasive while I struggled to make the truth fit around my love for him. I think what unsettled him most was not my anger. It was my calm. He tried a different angle. It wasn't physical. I held his gaze. Show me the full conversation. His fingers tightened around his phone. What? Unlock it, open the thread, hand it to me. His throat moved. That's private. The word landed between us and died there. You were texting another woman in our bed, I said, 3 feet from me. You do not get to use privacy as a shield now. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. Either it was harmless and you can show me, or it was worse than what I already saw and you can't. He looked down at the phone in his hand as if it were suddenly heavy enough to weigh him down, and that was all the answer I needed. I nodded once. Right. He took a quick step forward when I reached for my laptop bag and keys. Where are you going? Away from you. You can't just leave like this. I absolutely can. You're blowing this up over texts. I stopped at the bedroom door and looked back at him. Tell me about the weekend. His face changed. A flicker. Fast but undeniable. That same tiny blanch I had seen when I quoted the prison sentence line. What weekend? The one you can't stop thinking about. The one that made you feel things you forgot existed. Silence. The kind that confirms everything. I nodded again, slower this time. Thought so. He followed me into the hallway. Please, Natalie, just let me explain. There is nothing you can say that makes those messages better. I made a mistake. No, I said, opening the front door. You made choices, repeatedly. Outside, the morning air was cool enough to sting. Birds were loud in the trees, weirdly cheerful in that insulting way the world sometimes is when your life has just ruptured. Behind me, I heard him call my name again. I didn't turn around. I drove straight to Tessa's apartment. She buzzed me in without asking questions because she had already seen the email. When she opened the door, she took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug so hard it almost broke the numbness. "Oh my God," she whispered into my hair. "He really did this." I nodded once against her shoulder. That was all I could manage. She got me inside, sat me on the couch, put coffee in front of me I didn't drink, and muted her phone because hers was blowing up now too. Our friends were already talking. My mother had already called her mother. Someone's aunt had probably started a group text by then. News travels fast when it is ugly enough. By noon, Evan had called me 31 times. Texted 24. The messages followed a predictable pattern. "Please answer. This isn't what you think. I can explain. You had no right to send that to people. You embarrassed me in front of my family. Natalie, please. Please just let me talk to you." Then, a little later, "If you don't answer me, you're making this worse." That one almost impressed me. Even now, even after being caught, some part of him still believed his biggest problem was not betrayal, but my refusal to help manage the fallout. I didn't answer a single message. Around 1, Claire called. Not Evan's mother. His mother. The woman who had once texted me 3 casserole recipes and told strangers at brunch I was the best thing that ever happened to her son. I let it ring the first time. Then again. Then a third. On the 4th, I answered. Her voice came sharp and breathless, already mid-emotion. "Natalie, what is going on? Richard says you canceled the wedding. Evan is hysterical. What did you send?" "I sent screenshots of what your son was texting Sienna at 2 this morning." A beat of silence. Then, softer, more carefully, he said it was taken out of context. Of course he did. I stared at the wall across from Tessa's couch and spoke slowly. He told another woman he missed her, wanted to be with her, and that our wedding felt like a prison sentence. There is no context that improves that. Claire exhaled shakily. "Oh, sweetheart. That word almost got me. Not because it comforted me, because a part of me remembered when it had. We need to talk this through," she said, privately, as a family. "No, you can't make a decision like this in one night." I didn't. He made it over weeks, maybe months. "You don't know that." My voice cooled. "Then ask him why he wouldn't show me the full conversation." Silence again. A longer one? I could practically hear the gears moving in her head. The maternal instinct to defend him colliding with the very obvious possibility that he had lied to her already. "He says nothing physical happened." "How would you know?" That landed. I knew it did because she inhaled sharply and didn't answer right away. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. Less certain. More frightened. "Let me talk to him." "Do that." Then I ended the call. Tessa came back from the kitchen and handed me a glass of water. "Well?" "He's already telling people it's out of context." She sat down beside me, one knee pulled up under her. "Of course he is." I looked at my silent phone, then out the window where sunlight had started warming the parked cars below. The strangest part of that day was not the heartbreak. It was the speed. How fast a future can collapse once truth enters the room. At midnight, I was a fiancé 6 weeks away from her wedding. By afternoon, I was a woman sitting on her best friend's couch with a toiletries bag, a laptop, a canceled ceremony, and the taste of betrayal still sitting metallic and bitter at the back of her throat. And beneath the exhaustion, beneath the grief, I still had not fully allowed myself to feel. One certainty kept pulsing steady as a second heartbeat. He still hadn't told me the whole truth, and whatever happened on that weekend with Sienna was waiting in the dark just beyond what I already knew. By the second day, the adrenaline had started wearing off. That was when the pain tried to move in. The first 24 hours after a betrayal are almost mechanical. There are calls to make, things to cancel, evidence to save, logistics to handle. Your body runs on shock and purpose. You do what needs doing because doing is easier than feeling. But once the practical fires are contained, grief starts showing up like a bill you thought you had already paid. I stayed at Tessa's apartment the first night and most of the next day, but by the evening of day 2, I couldn't stand the stillness of it anymore. Tessa's place was warm and safe and full of love, but it wasn't mine. Every surface reminded me I was a displaced person inside my own life. So I left and went to my friend Jason's condo across town. Jason and I had known each other since high school. He was one of those rare friends who didn't ask for a full emotional performance before offering support. He opened the door, saw the duffel bag in my hand and the look on my face, and just stepped aside. "Guest room's clean," he said. "Coffee's strong. Fridge is full. You can talk now, later, or never." I almost cried right there from the mercy of that. Later, I said. He nodded once. Good, because if you talk now, I'll probably say something violent and unhelpful. Despite everything, that got a small laugh out of me. I stayed there after that. Not because I was afraid to go home, but because I knew Evan would expect me there. He knew my habits too well, knew when I usually got back from work, which grocery store I used, what nights I tended to do laundry, when I watered the plants on the deck. Grief is bad enough without having to dodge ambush apologies in your own driveway. And he did try. The calls did not stop. By the end of the third day, he had called me more than 60 times. His texts moved in waves. The begging phase came first. Please let me explain. You know me better than this. I made a horrible mistake. Please don't throw away 3 years over one bad night. Then came anger. I can't believe you sent that to my parents. You wanted to humiliate me. You've turned everyone against me. I hope you feel good about this. Then remorse again. I love you. I'm sick over what I did. I can't eat. I can't sleep. Please, Natalie, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. It was amazing, really, how every version of the message still centered him. His pain, his embarrassment, his panic, his fear of consequences. Not once in those first days did he send anything that felt like real accountability. Not once did he say, "You were right. I betrayed you. I lied to your face. I broke something I had no right to break." He wanted forgiveness before he had even fully admitted the crime. I never answered. He showed up at my work on the third day. I was in the operations office reviewing a delayed inbound shipment when one of the front desk staff called up and said carefully, "Natalie, there's a man here asking for you, says it's urgent." I looked out through the narrow office window toward the lobby. Evan, standing in the middle of the polished floor like he belonged there. He looked terrible. Wrinkled button down, eyes red, hair unstyled. The kind of appearance men wear when they want their suffering to be legible. I picked up the office phone and called security before he even made it upstairs. They handled it professionally. Calm voices, firm posture, hands visible. He resisted just enough to be irritating, not enough to make a scene that could get him arrested. On the way out, he looked up and saw me through the glass. Our eyes met for a second. He lifted one hand, pleading. I turned away. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next day he came back. This time he got as far as the lobby seating area before someone recognized him from the day before and called me again. Security escorted him out a second time. After that, HR sent him a formal no-contact notice stating that any further attempts to appear at my workplace would be documented and, if necessary, forwarded to law enforcement. When they copied me on the notice, I sat at my desk reading it with a strange, numb satisfaction. He had reduced himself to a legal inconvenience. That felt fitting. His mother called again that night. Claire sounded different this time. Still emotional, but tighter. Less indignant, more tired. Natalie, she said, he's falling apart. I leaned against Jason's kitchen counter, staring at the dark window over the sink. That sounds like a consequence. You don't have to be cruel. My laugh came out flatter than I meant it to. Cruel is planning a wedding with one woman while promising another woman that you'll be together once everything settles down. You don't know what that meant. Then tell your son to explain it. He says it was emotional confusion, that it got out of hand. I closed my eyes for a moment. Claire, did he show you the full conversation? Silence. That told me everything. No, I said softly. I thought not. He says you'd misunderstand the context. I let that sit there between us for a second before replying. That's a very convenient sentence for a guilty man. She exhaled heavily. I'm not defending what he did. I'm trying to keep this from destroying his life. He should have thought about his life before he started building a secret one. You sent those screenshots to vendors, Natalie. To people in his industry. Yes, that follows him. He called our wedding a prison sentence while cashing our deposits and smiling through cake tastings. You could have handled it privately. He could have cheated privately too, and yet here we are. She didn't answer right away, and when she spoke again, her voice was smaller. He says nothing physical happened. How many times are people going to offer me that line like it's supposed to comfort me? It matters. Does it? Yes. I pushed off the counter and walked into the living room, needing movement. No, Claire. What matters is that he gave another woman the part of himself that was supposed to be inside our life with honesty. He lied to me for weeks, maybe longer. He made me stand in front of family, friends, vendors, all these people planning a future around us, while he was telling someone else he wished he could be with her. Whether he slept with her or only wanted to is not the part that saves him. Her breathing hitched once, like she was crying or trying not to. I loved you, she said suddenly. You know that, right? That one hurt. Not because it changed anything, because it was true. I know, I said quietly. And I loved you too. But loving me would mean telling the truth now, even if it hurts your son. She had no answer for that. We hung up gently, but the sadness of it stayed with me long after. The next call came from Lily. And unlike her mother, Lily didn't waste time pretending there was a version of events where I was the problem. I'm not defending him, she said the second I picked up. I just need to know how bad it really is because he is telling different stories to different people, and I'm getting annoyed. That, despite everything, sounded exactly like her. I sat down on the edge of Jason's guest bed. He told you what? That it was just emotional venting, that you saw a handful of messages and spiraled, that he never meant any of it the way it sounded. I stared at the floor. He said that? Yeah. I opened my phone, pulled up the screenshots, and forwarded every image I had taken that night. Not just the clearest one. All of them. The late-night declarations. The prison sentence line. The soon, baby, soon. The hints about that weekend. Everything. Then I waited. Lily called back 20 minutes later. Her voice had changed. Gone sharper. Colder. Stripped of the cautious neutrality she had started with. Oh, she said, wow. Yeah. This is so much worse than what he told us. I know. He said it was friendly catching up. Natalie, he literally told her your wedding was a prison sentence. I know. He said his heart was with her. I know. And what does once everything settles down even mean? I leaned back against the wall. It means he was planning to keep using me until the timing felt convenient. Jesus. There was a pause. I could hear hospital noise faintly in the background on her end. A monitor beeping. Someone calling a name. Then she said quietly, I'm really sorry. That almost broke me more than all the apologies Evan had sent, because hers was the first one that didn't ask anything from me in return. She's been telling people you overreacted, Lily added. Mom too, I think, at first. They thought maybe you blasted everyone over harmless messages. Do they still think that? No, I swallowed. Do you? Another pause. No, she said. I think my brother blew up his life and thought he'd still have time to manage the narrative. Exactly, Lily sighed. What about the deposits? Most are gone. The venue might refund part because of the infidelity clause. The rest, probably not. I'm out a lot. How much? 12 grand, maybe more, depending on what I can recover. She cursed softly under her breath. That's brutal. Yeah. I'm sorry, Natalie. For real. I wish I had something more useful to say. You already did. After we hung up, I sat there in the quiet guest room, holding my phone and staring at the blank wall. It mattered to be believed. That was something no one warns you about after betrayal. The pain is one thing, the humiliation is another, but the deepest secondary injury is often the possibility that people will not fully believe your version unless the evidence is ugly enough to overcome their affection for the other person. I had made sure the evidence was undeniable, and still they had tried to sand it down into something manageable until they saw more. 2 days later, Richard called. That one surprised me. Richard was not a phone call man. He was a speak-only-when-necessary man, the kind of father whose disapproval could fill a room without him raising his voice. I answered from the loading dock during a break, stepping out into the cold spring air to take it. Natalie. Richard. I'll be direct. I assumed you would. A small exhale on the other end, almost a humorless laugh. My son made a serious mistake. That wording irritated me instantly. Did he? Yes, Richard said. And I'm not asking you to take him back. I'm not stupid, but I am asking you to think carefully about how much further this needs to go. I leaned against the cinder block wall beside the dock door. It goes as far as his choices took it. You sent those screenshots to vendors, people in his field. Yes. That kind of thing follows someone. He followed his ex back into a relationship while engaged to me. He let that sit. Then, lower. What would it take to settle this quietly from here? I went still. There it was. The real reason for the call. Not reconciliation. Containment. You're trying to buy my silence. I'm trying to reimburse your losses and stop this from becoming permanent damage to everyone involved. Everyone involved, I repeated. Interesting phrasing. You know what I mean. I did. What he meant was his son's reputation. His son's future. His son's professional life. Not my humiliation. Not my wasted money. Not the months of lies. Not the fact that I had been planning a wedding while the man beside me was emotionally elsewhere. I'm already permanently damaged, Richard, I said. The difference is, no one's offering to reverse that part. He was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke with the careful tone of a man choosing each word like it might explode. I'll cover your losses, all documented deposits, plus extra for the trouble. For the trouble. You know what I mean. This time I almost smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your son cheats on me, lies to me, embarrasses me publicly, wastes months of my life, and you're calling the aftermath trouble. His voice hardened slightly. I'm calling as one adult to another. I'm trying to handle what can still be handled. I looked out across the employee lot at trucks coming and going, at ordinary people living ordinary afternoons. And underneath my anger, something colder surfaced again. Practicality. Because as much as part of me wanted to reject any money attached to that family on principle, another part knew I was staring at real losses, real bills, real deposits, real consequences with dollar amounts attached. What exactly are you offering? I asked. Richard didn't hesitate this time. $15,000, he said. Cash. Tonight if you want it. We draw up a simple agreement. No legal escalation, no further distribution of those screenshots, and we all move forward. I let the number sit in the air. 15,000. Enough to cover what I had already lost. Enough to soften the financial blow. Enough to make this feel, in his mind, like a transaction that could be closed. It was almost impressive. The way some families believe money can still impose order on something that has already burned down. You're not buying silence, I said slowly. You're buying control. I'm offering a resolution. You're offering a way for him to avoid the full weight of what he did. And you're making sure he never escapes it. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said. He made sure of that himself. There was a pause. Then, quieter. Take the money, Natalie. Cover your losses. Walk away clean. I thought about it. Not emotionally. Logically. The deposits were real. The contracts were real. The financial damage wasn't symbolic. It was measurable, and refusing compensation wouldn't undo anything he had done. It would just leave me paying for his betrayal out of my own pocket. I'll take 10, I said finally. Another pause. Not anger. Consideration. Why less? Because I'm not taking hush money, I replied. I'm taking reimbursement. 10,000 covers what I can prove I lost. I'll sign something saying we've settled the financial side. That's it. And the screenshots? If vendors ask why the wedding was canceled, I tell the truth. I don't embellish. I don't campaign. But I don't lie for him either. Silence stretched for a few seconds longer this time. Then Richard said, That's reasonable. I know. I'll have something drafted. And Richard? Yes. Your son's problem isn't going to be fixed by you writing checks. He didn't respond. Just hung up. The check arrived a week later. Simple envelope. Simple agreement. No dramatic language. Just legal phrasing, acknowledging reimbursement for documented losses, and a mutual decision not to pursue further claims. I read it twice, signed it, deposited the check, paid off what I could. I still came out behind, but not by enough to keep me awake at night. That part, at least, was handled. Evan, however, was not. He tried one more time. Of course he did. It was a Thursday evening when he showed up at Jason's condo. Jason opened the door before I could reach it, already annoyed. Nope, he said flatly. Evan stood there, looking worse than before. Dark circles, unshaven. That same disheveled desperation that had started to feel less like pain and more like performance. I just need 5 minutes, Evan said. Please. Jason glanced back at me. I nodded once. Fine, I said. 5 minutes, right there. I stayed in the hallway. Didn't invite him in. Didn't offer him a seat. Didn't soften anything. He stepped inside just enough to clear the doorway, then stopped, like he understood instinctively that crossing any further line would get him thrown out. I made a mistake, he said immediately. A huge one. I'm not denying that. I crossed my arms. Good, that's a start. But it doesn't erase everything we had, he rushed on. 3 years, Natalie. That has to mean something. It does, I said. It means I know exactly what I'm walking away from. He flinched. We were good together. Until you weren't. We can fix this. No, you can't. I can, he insisted, if you just give me the chance to explain. You already explained, I cut in. You just didn't realize you were doing it. That's not fair. It's very fair. You told another woman you wished you were with her, that your heart was with her, that marrying me felt like prison. That is a complete explanation. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I was scared, he said. The wedding was getting real. Everything was getting serious, and I panicked. Sienna was familiar, easy. It didn't mean I didn't love you. I let that sit for a second. Then I said, so you had an emotional affair because you got cold feet. He winced. When you say it like that, how else should I say it? He took a step closer. I miss you, he said, softer now. I miss us. I miss what we had. There is no us, I replied. There's me, and there's you, and there's the version of your life you were building with her while standing next to me. I wasn't building anything with her. Then what was once everything settles down supposed to mean? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Again. That hesitation again. That tiny fatal pause. I exhaled slowly. That's what I thought. I ended it, he said quickly. With her. Completely. The second you found out. Of course you did. I'm serious. I know you are, I said, because you didn't have a choice anymore. He looked like he wanted to argue that, but couldn't. I'm not a backup plan, Evan, I continued. I'm not the safe option you fall back on when your first choice gets complicated. You were never a backup. You just treated me like one. Silence. Then, almost pleading, can you forgive me? I tilted my head slightly. Eventually, probably. Hope flickered across his face too quickly. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. The hope died just as fast. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you can trust me again, he said. No, I replied calmly. You'll spend the rest of your life hiding things better. That's not who I am. I held his gaze. I watched you lie to me in our bed, I said quietly. 6 inches away from me. Without hesitation. Without guilt. Without even looking up. That is exactly who you are. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. His shoulders slumped. For a moment, he looked less like a man fighting for a relationship and more like someone realizing for the first time that there are consequences you can't charm your way out of. Go home, Evan, I said. He didn't move. Please, he tried one last time. I shook my head. When you're alone later, I said, and you're wondering how everything fell apart, remember this moment. Remember that you chose this long before I did. Jason stepped forward then, putting a quiet end to it. Time's up. Evan stood there for another second, like he might argue. Then he turned and left. An hour later, he came back, this time with his mother. Claire pushed past Jason before he could block her. We're not leaving until you explain yourself, she said, already halfway into the living room. I stepped out from the hallway, tired more than angry now. There's nothing left to explain. You destroyed his reputation, she snapped. Everyone thinks he's a cheater. He is a cheater. Some texts do not make someone a cheater. Emotional affairs are still affairs, I said evenly. The betrayal doesn't become harmless just because clothes stayed on. Nothing physical happened, she insisted. I looked at Evan, then back at her. Are you sure about that? The room went quiet. Claire turned slowly toward her son. What does she mean? Evan said nothing. That was answer number 1. I took a step closer. What about the weekend? I asked him. His face went pale. Claire's eyes snapped back to me. What weekend? I kept my voice steady. The one he can't stop thinking about. The one that made him feel things he forgot existed. Claire's expression shifted. Not anger anymore. Suspicion. Evan, she said. He swallowed. It was nothing. Which conference? I pressed. Still silence. Then I said it for him. Denver, 2 months ago. The one where the Wi-Fi was so bad we barely spoke for 3 days. Claire turned fully toward him now. Did something happen at that conference? No, he said quickly. We just talked. You're lying, I said. His jaw tightened. Don't do this. You told her you think about that weekend constantly, I continued. That she makes you feel alive. That's not just dinner. Claire's voice shook. Evan, what happened? He looked between us. Cornered. And finally, we kissed, he muttered. The word dropped like glass shattering. Claire stared at him. That's it? She asked. He nodded too fast. Just once. I didn't even bother arguing. Because at that point, it didn't matter. Not really. He had already crossed every line that counted. Claire looked like someone had physically struck her. You told me nothing happened, she whispered. It didn't mean anything. You lied to me. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Final. I stepped back. I'm done here, I said. Jason moved toward the door. Both of you, out. Claire didn't argue this time. She looked at her son like she didn't recognize him anymore. Then she walked out. Evan followed. At the door, she paused and turned back toward me. You're making a mistake, she said weakly. He's a good man. I met her gaze. If your husband was texting another woman like that, I asked quietly, would you call it nothing? She didn't answer, just turned and left. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And just like that, the last illusion shattered. 3 days after that, Sienna messaged me. Of course she did. It came through Instagram first. A polite little notification sitting at the top of my inbox like it belonged there. Hey, I know this is awkward, but I wanted to reach out. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. There are moments where you know exactly what someone is about to say before they say it. Not the exact wording, but the intention, the angle, the careful attempt to sound reasonable while sidestepping responsibility. I opened the message anyway. What happened between Evan and me wasn't planned. We have history, and sometimes feelings don't just disappear. I didn't mean to hurt you. He's really struggling right now. He cares about you. He just got confused about what he wants. Maybe it's better this happened before the wedding instead of after things got more complicated. I read it once, then again. Then I laughed. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, disbelieving exhale at how predictable people become when they think they're being original. I typed back, "You're not sorry I got hurt. You're sorry you got caught." I stared at the blinking cursor for a second, then added, "You were planning a future with an engaged man and telling him to be patient while things settled down. Don't dress that up like it's some tragic love story. You knew exactly what you were doing." I hit send. Then I blocked her. No follow-up. No curiosity. No interest in hearing her version of anything. Because there is no version of events where she didn't know he was engaged. No version where she accidentally encouraged him to leave one woman for another. No version where she wasn't comfortable stepping into a space that wasn't hers. People like to romanticize that kind of situation. Call it complicated. Call it timing. Call it unfinished business. It isn't. It's entitlement. Evan tried again after that. Not directly. Through other people. Mutual friends started reaching out. Every few days, someone new would message me. "Hey, I know things are messy, but he's really not doing well. He's learned his lesson. He just wants to talk. He says he's changed." The words were always slightly different. The message was always the same. Give him another chance. I gave the same response every time. "I appreciate you reaching out. There's nothing to discuss." He made his choice. I made mine. Some of them pushed a little. Most didn't. People understand finality more than they admit. They just don't like being the ones to accept it first. Yeah. Evan also started showing up in places he knew I would be. The gym, the grocery store near my house, a small restaurant I used to go to on weekends. The first time it happened, I froze for half a second when I saw him across the produce section, standing there like he had been waiting. Then I turned around and left. No scene, no words, no acknowledgement. Just absence. The second time, same thing. By the third time, I didn't even feel the initial jolt anymore. Just a quiet, practiced detachment. He wanted interaction. He wanted a reaction. Even anger would have fed whatever hope he was still clinging to. So I gave him nothing. Not even eye contact. That, more than anything, seemed to finally start reaching him. About a month later, a letter showed up at my house. Handwritten. 10 pages. Front and back. I sat at my kitchen table in the house that still smelled faintly like paint and wood polish, and everything I had built long before he moved in, and read it once. It was exactly what you would expect. Apologies. Explanations. Justifications disguised as self-awareness. Somewhere in the middle, buried under paragraphs of regret, was the line that stood out. "I've realized I have deep commitment issues. I think I sabotage good things when I get scared of losing them. This wasn't about you not being enough. You were always enough. I was the broken one." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I folded the letter and put it in the trash. Because self-awareness after the damage is done does not undo the damage. It just explains it. A few days later, Lily called. "Did you get his letter?" she asked. "Yeah, and?" "Not interested." She was quiet for a second. "He's actually trying, she said. Therapy, journaling, all of it. I've never seen him like this." "I believe you." "You don't care?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the backyard deck I had built with my own hands. "I do care," I said. "Just not enough to go back." "He's different now." "Good," I replied. "Then he can be different with someone else." "You won't even consider it?" "Never." There was no hesitation in my voice, and I think that was the moment she fully understood. "Okay," she said quietly. I had to ask. "I know." Time passed. Not dramatically, not in some cinematic montage of healing. Just slowly, days stacking into weeks. The noise around the situation started fading. Fewer messages, fewer updates, fewer people trying to mediate something that was already over. Then one afternoon, Lily texted me out of nowhere. "Thought you'd want to know." A screenshot followed. I opened it and stared. Sienna's Instagram. A photo. Her hand wrapped around a man's arm. A ring on her finger. A caption about finding her soulmate. Posted 3 weeks after Evan had ended things with her. I blinked once, then laughed. This time out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly, brutally predictable. A few seconds later, Lily called. "He ghosted her," she said immediately. The second things got complicated. "Of course he did." She moved out of state trying to start over, saw the post, completely lost it, called him, blocked, called from my mom's phone. His fiancé answered. I closed my eyes for a second. Let the irony settle. "So let me get this straight," I said. "He throws away our relationship, our wedding, his reputation, for someone who was juggling him and someone else at the same time." "Yeah." And she told him to be patient while things settled down, because she was settling down with someone else. "Yeah." I exhaled slowly. "You can't make this up." "Nope." A month later, I sold the ring. The jeweler gave me about 40% of what it originally cost. $3,000. I didn't argue. I took the check, walked out, and used the money for something that actually belonged to me. I took a trip, drove west. No itinerary, no schedule, just open road and distance. I went through 4 national parks, camped under skies so wide they made everything that had happened feel smaller. Not insignificant, just not everything. For the first time in months, I stopped checking my phone every hour, stopped waiting for updates, stopped replaying conversations in my head. I slept, really slept. No late night thoughts creeping in, no imagined scenarios, just quiet. When I came back, the house felt different, not empty, not lonely, clear, like something that had been cluttering the space had finally been removed. I rearranged a few things, got rid of what he left behind, kept what was mine, which in the end was most of it, because I had built that life before he ever stepped into it. I saw Claire one last time, at a grocery store, produce section. Same place I had walked away from Evan weeks earlier. She looked older, tired. She saw me, paused, opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then just gave me a small, sad nod. I nodded back. Nothing else needed to be said. People keep asking if I regret how I handled it, sending the screenshots, canceling everything overnight, walking away without giving him space to explain. I always give the same answer. Number. Because regret would mean I believe there was a better version of that moment where I kept my dignity and stayed. There wasn't. Some endings are loud, messy, explosive. Others are quiet, precise, final. Mine was the second kind. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that clarity is a kind of mercy, even when it arrives in the worst possible way. Especially then,